The historic city is a World Heritage Site. It was registered in 1979 by the UNESCO as being a heritage of important values. The medieval city was built, started, let's say, with the first city Fustat in the south, with the Arab conquest, and then we had Askar, Qata'a, and Al-Qahira when the Fatimid came in the 10th century. They englobed these four cities together to create one big capital for Egypt. But historic Cairo is mainly the city of the Mamluks, who came after the Ayyubids, because they adorned the city with the biggest monuments we see today. This is a panoramic view of the city. It was taken in the late 19th century, and you get to see how they're popping out. And the minarets are also a way of identifying where you are, because they're different. So when you see one, you say, so I know which neighborhood it is. But then what is also exciting is the skyline. You have the Mosque of Muhammad Ali here in the citadel on the hill, looking at the city and creating a very interesting dialogue with the mosque and the madrasa of Sultan Hassan. 14th century, speaking to 19th century, perhaps. The skyline of the city is definitely dominated by the minarets. And we even call Cairo the city of the 1,000 minarets. Like in here, you see the minaret of Mu'ayyid Sheikh, which are those two imposing twin towers that the Sultan, the Mamluk Sultan, has placed on the Fatimid gates of Cairo, the southern gates of Cairo, of Bab Zuwayla. And that this is an important landmark today in the city because we are just in front of the market of the tent makers. The Mosque of Mu'ayyid Sheikh is not just famous for its twin minarets, it's also famous because of its entrance door. You see, we have here the magnificent entrance portal with its muqarnas, which is the stalactite composition we have on top. And then even you have here reused granite from pharaonic times that the builder has placed on the sides. And then at the time, the Sultan al-Mu'ayyid Sheikh decided to use the mosque, the door of Sultan Hassan. He actually bought the door, the historians tell us. The price was not much. And he placed this magnificent bronze door in his new mosque. But Mu'ayyid Sheikh did not erase the name of Sultan Hassan, probably because it's a craftsmanship of value and it's a piece of art. This is the mosque of, it's a Mamluk mosque of Al-Maridani, a very particular and important mosque in this street because when you see how the Mamluk builder has placed it within the urban fabric, it comes in a place where you are doing a bend in the street. So there's always the debate, was the mosque first and then the street, or the street first and then the mosque? These monuments are the one protected, the one listed, the one that the Ministry of Antiquities and the Ministry of Endowment as well are in charge of, let's say. But then you have the urban fabric. It's very rare to find a house that is older than the 18th century because throughout its history, the urban fabric was, built and replaced and demolished, and like every other city, it's an accumulation of many layers on top of each other. But you have some beautiful 19th century in some areas, what is characteristic to it is the mashrabiyya. The mashrabiyya is these windows done with turned wood, and Cairo is very famous with its mashrabiyyas. Back then in the 19th century, it was just one out of many other traditional houses with their characteristic entrance. You see the entrance doors are arched, and then you have the mashrabiyya, the wooden projected windows on the upper floors, and then perhaps more additions on top with these Ottoman windows. This is all equally important as the monument, because if the surrounding disappears, then the monument will also lose a very significant partner, let's say. It is these houses that are today under attack and being replaced. It's very, very rare to find them now. You have to understand as well the background of where heritage preservation in Egypt comes from. We come from a very much monument and museum-centered philosophy. The official narrative, when they started doing the mega conservation and restoration projects, which, by the way, happened because we had an earthquake in 1992. So all these monuments were shattered. And there was a huge, big call so that people would pinch in and start looking for funds to restore these monuments. But then what was the official description of it? We want to make it an open museum. But it's a city, it's not a museum. This was the background of most of Naguib Mahfouz's novels. Naguib Mahfouz is Egypt's most famous author who won the Nobel Prize. This is also the background of many of our traditional songs and our movies as well. The names inside the city rings so many bells. Maybe that's the excitement of it, is that you go and you discover things and you discover the manners and the traditions and the sounds and the smells, and all this is so vibrant and it brings lots of meanings and lots of significance to the place. And maybe that's why people like to go and visit these areas, because they feel the authenticity in it. And you see the people working on their crafts. They've been doing these same movements for centuries and centuries. So the urban fabric lies in the responsibility of the district, which belongs to the government of Cairo. The monument's responsibility is shared between the Ministry of Endowments, who actually owns the places, and the Ministry of Antiquities, who is responsible for any restoration or maintenance work happening inside the building. But in the end, there is no communication between these institutions. The outcome of all this is not satisfying. I was doing a survey building by building to do a rehabilitation project for a proposal afterwards. And I was shocked because I discovered that officially every single house in that street had an order whether to demolish to the ground or to demolish the upper floors. It was a way for the engineers and the architects of the district to say that this is not our responsibility. If anything collapsed, we already told them that the house is old and that they need to restore this and that. The problem is, again, with the legislation, is that the lease is very low. So people are paying, the rent of what they're paying is nothing. So the owner of the place do not profit from the place. So they're being demolished, replaced with apartment buildings with absolutely no character to the historic city, unfortunately. With Save Cairo, actually, we found that we were constantly fighting the demolition of older houses and the looting of monuments, of course. We got to points where we were really depressed, I have to say. And this is where we decided, we're all more or less architects or professionals working in the restoration or studying the history. And this is where we decided, now we need to change our tactics. All this really started for us, seeing the alarming situation the historic city is facing, is when the owners of Beit Qurra decided to demolish their gateway. And luckily, my dearest friend, Dr. Ala al-Habashi, managed to retrieve some of the stone blocks from this demolished gateway, which was just a pile of debris on the street, and he remounted it into this into his courtyard. Beit Madkour, it's again one of those beautiful courtyard houses which are dotted with this It's a bit of, yeah, it's traditional architecture of the late 18th, early 19th centuries, and which were probably built or still have pieces from Mamluk layers, because these are big houses in Darb al-Ahmar. In Darb al-Ahmar, we know it was the residency of many high officials and high-ranking emirs. But when I went, this is what I saw. And I entered inside and I discovered that the courtyard were still preserved in a way, and that we have such beautiful architecture inside. So today it's encroached with these illegal construction that took place after 2011. And the facade overlooking the street collapsed because, well, it was an intentional demolition. We know that. So we've put all our efforts in Save Cairo to stop the demolition of this house. And we tried really all the channels we were given. We succeeded to stop the demolition, but it's still very risky. We don't know what's going to happen next. The tenants of the house are the real saviors of the house, because they are the ones who were calling us and telling us, watch out, they're doing this, watch out, they're doing that. The guardians and the custodians of the city are its inhabitants, I have to say. You would go and visit a historical mosque, and then you'll find it locked. And they would tell you, the key is with this gentleman who lives across the street. And he would bring the key for you. They are the real savers of the city. And they care about their heritage. And I think we need to empower them more, and we need to show them that their role in their community is important. In 1933, a French architect, Edmond Poty, wrote a report in defense of the historic city. And he said that the very first monument of the historic city of Cairo is the city itself. The urban fabric is not protected, and the legislation does not allow us, back then actually, to interfere on a private property. And that's why we campaigned and we lobbied heavily when they were writing the Egyptian constitution in 2014, and we succeeded to add a new article, Article 50, because we wanted to introduce the word heritage in our constitution. And such article would allow us to perhaps be able to work on changing the legislation so that you can interfere on a private property and tell the owner that, no, you're not allowed to demolish your house, because it represents a significant architecture that is a witness of one part of the city's memory that needs to be preserved.